The draft is about hope. I think people overestimate the risk of like doing something bold.
So you're saying be bold, but not too bold.
No.
Okay.
No. What I'm saying, good point. I think I'm saying, Shane,
This draft in particular, it's interesting to me because it's 20 years ago. I was drafted in 05. Here we are, 2005. I'm 40 years old. It was half a lifetime ago, literally half a lifetime ago that I was drafted. And so every time of year this comes around, it obviously brings up a ton of memories, all the fucking hoopla and prognosticators and, the up and down and, obviously this year, Shador, where's he going to go? Is he, some people very high on him. Other people have him falling. It played out my year, obviously, with Aaron. And so I just find it fascinating. It brings up a ton of memories, obviously, for me. But I do find the crux of the quarterback fascinating in the sense that I just said it teams overreach for QBs every single year in the draft, every single year, right? They're overvalued and therefore historically have the lowest hit rate. I think I've said this before. It's historical data, the lowest hit rate of any position of a first round picks quarterbacks by far. However, it's clearly the most important position in football.
Yep.
And you don't get a quarterback by accident, right? It doesn't just magically fall in your lap. You do have to do something aggressive and risky to find one, right?
Yep.
You have to go trade up in the draft and sacrifice draft capital to get a guy. You have to go make a bold trade with a team.
You got to play.
You
can't play not to lose on it. You have to go do something.
And however, though, it's like funny that as a GM or an owner, like these are the very things, though, that very likely might get you fired.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But you have to get one.
Yes.
Right. And all the teams at the bottom end are searching for one and trying to figure this out.
Shane, like, do you think that is, could you do something similar in basketball and would it work?
It's a little bit different than the NFL because in the NFL, every person that is in the top 5 rounds is fast, strong, quick, all of the above, right? And in the NFL, I would argue that the differentiators is the processing speed and the intelligence, right? Now, in basketball, there's a pretty linear line of like what we'd call talent in terms of like athleticism, length, kind of raw skills. And so those guys tend to get valued more. And so I rarely hear people saying we need a point guard. We're going to draft a point guard. It's usually the best player and usually the best person that has the most physical attributes that go the highest.
So maybe asked another way, I feel like, and I understand your point. It's like a different question because it's people have sort of accepted this positionless idea more so, which that makes sense to me. And obviously that you can't do that in football, but I guess still same question, which is, I was struck when Alex said you got to draft the can't miss guys early. And what my brain goes to is like, how confident are you that they are can't miss? And my impression is that in basketball, you can't be as confident in somebody being can't miss as like, it being predictive because they're so young and so many people have like the length and the athleticism and whatever. And so it's sort of like, how can you say that?
There's no such a thing as a can't miss 18-year-old.
Yeah.
It's not named LeBron James. Right. Yeah. I mean, LeBron was, he was a can't miss guy. Everybody else, there's always a question. Give me any name. All right. And there's always a question mark. Maybe. And it depends on where you fit. So it is much more, that's the crapshoot in basketball. That's why you're drafting length, athleticism, and raw skills. And you hope that the mental sort of follows and the guy has the heart to take it to the next level. Like you can't get to that level unless you have just unbelievable physical skills and like raw material, I guess you could say, raw talent to run, jump, and dribble the basketball at the same time.
I think the positionless thing, in basketball, lends itself to your point, Shane. Just take the best player, and the measurables. I think in basketball do have a larger impact. Like there is a floor you have to meet for most players of length and agility and athleticism. The other thing that's weird about basketball that I think is like how many rookies actually play, that make a roster and play. It's the turnover that is not as high as at least from my view. The churn in the NFL is enormous.
Yeah.
I mean, the number of rookies that make rosters and play in the NFL is huge. And so these are, they're cheap contracts. So it makes the cap flow. And again, there's huge rosters. There's 53 guys on an active roster, obviously a lot more when you count practice squad, but the churn's greater. And then obviously you do have very specific positions. Rarely you see guys do change, but for the most part, whatever position you're in. Like there will be GMs that just they reach every year. And the quarterback's the biggest culprit of this.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, it's obviously the most desired position, and every year players get overdrafted every single year.
But dude, it's so interesting you say that, because I agree with you. I was just thinking though, like if you go back, like to just take the basketball point, like the guy who I think most people say is the best player of the league is Nikola Jokic, right? And like he was a deep second round pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
He's not the same level of athletic that all these other guys are, right? But he's a fucking savant. Like he's just amazing. And so it's just like interesting that the current best player in the league is some guy that like doesn't meet really any of the specs, and was drafted super deep. So it just definitely tells you that it's like not that much of a science. And the second thing, to your exact point, Alex, on like people reaching, like the team that has the best record in the league by far has this dude, Shea, who like was traded. They remember they like traded Paul George and they got Shea and like a whole shitload of picks.
It was kind of the throw-in.
Yeah. And like they're the best team in the league, or at least best record in the league. And they also have the craziest future. Like I'll tell you, like this guy, Sam Presti, it's insane. Like they have a team that won 68 games and they have like 35 picks in the next 10 years.
That I think that is one of the only ways to accumulate talent in Oklahoma City, right? Like if you're a small market team in basketball, you have a serious disadvantage.
It's luck. All right. It's luck. The bounce of the ping pong ball. All right. The evaluation of the player, that maybe flipped and swayed by one scout. Ready? Right. And like I remember on draft day, we drafted Bam Adebayo and the Miami Heat. He was a lottery pick, and obviously, he's been an all-pro player, an Olympic player, and an unbelievable player. But I'm not gonna say the guy who was being considered next to him. The guy's out of the league, right? And there was like serious conversation about, do we take this guy and go a little more offense, or do we take this guy and go a little bit more defense? And like now you're like, it's laughable. So like that's what the average fan doesn't realize. There's so much randomness and so much luck in the front office. And like there are good scouts because they put the work in and they're thoughtful and they are always updating their priors, like any good super forecaster would. But I think that's much rarer than the average fan would ever believe.
Shane, but like, I feel like you're literally making our point, right? Like if it is just dumb luck, more swings is better. Right. So like accumulate picks, take more swings. This is the Bill Belichick model forever. He traded down, accumulate picks in the middle of the round, right? Play the compensatory pick game. And it's just more swings. And it was infamous. There were some years he would take like 4 or 5 DBs. And you're like, well, why? You don't even have that many open roster spots. He's like, well, like one of them's got to hit, and so like, again, if you're Oklahoma City and you're You're not going to get a free agent. You're rarely going to attract a blue chip free agent, right? Like you have to do it a different way.
Well, Ravi, you're in the business of drafting. Okay. How's this any different than your day to day? Okay. You have a high draft pick. All right. You don't have infinite draft picks. You have a certain number of draft picks with institutional money that you better hit on. Right. And so, you don't have infinite cracks. You can't just keep, you probably will have a job much longer if you greenlight every founder that you talk to. So how do you think about that? How do you think about talent accumulation? How do you think about scouting for founders when you have limited resources for draft picks?
Yeah, I mean, it's often, I think people that pay any attention to venture capital, it's like people realize, I'm going to define it anyway, that it's a power law business. And so mathematically, the way this works is if typically in a fund, let's say you have a fund that you will make 40 investments in over a 2.5 year period. Typically, the way the math works in a successful fund is that one investment is worth more than the remaining 39 combined at the end of it, right? So you have, and then the second one is worth more than the remaining 38. And so think about just how extreme that is of like what that means, you know? And so constantly the thing that you're trying to look at is like, could this be something that like colloquially does it return the fund? If you invest $30 million, could you make 50 times your money and return a $1.5 billion fund on it? And so Shane, to your point, one thing that prevents you from just like taking a ton of swings, if we invested in 150 companies rather than 40 and made 10 million a piece, all of a sudden the return you need on one is just too high to like make up for all the other mistakes, right? And if you make the funds bigger, which a lot of times people do, the real problem that happens then is that you lower the bar for inclusion, you know, and you're no longer going after the great things. So anyway, to your point, what do any of us look for? The big thing you're looking for is spikiness rather than like excellence across the board. It needs something special and unique. It can't just be better, it has to be different. Do you see what I'm saying? And so a lot of what you're looking for is, it's not, are there good metrics across the board? Is there one that makes you like not be able to sleep afterwards? And that could be something in the person. It could be something in the data. It could be something in a reference. But I'll give you like a couple of examples that like come to mind. Okay. So one, when I went to work at Instacart, this is obviously not a venture capital investment, but in many ways it's even more extreme version because it's like not a portfolio of stuff, just one thing. There was two things that like really made me want to go beyond like liking the company. One was the founder told me that there was people ordering Instacart 15 times a month. And I remember hearing like, what? Like 15 times a month? And I couldn't believe he said that. Like, how often do you go to the grocery store? Once a week?
Yeah.
Great. So like the average thing for using a grocery store is like 4 times a month. This guy's saying people use his product 15 times a month. That is something that like doesn't, it's not just a number anymore. There's like a stat that's like, wait, the whole behavior is changing. Everybody is doing something super different than what I've ever heard of before. I could never imagine somebody going to a grocery store 15 times a month. I couldn't picture that. And the second thing was when I asked Avni what she thought, she said, I love it. And if you wanted to move, I wouldn't move unless Instacart delivered to the new house. And you think about somebody telling you that they wouldn't fucking move unless this product existed there. And I was like, whoa. So my point on that is like, even though the numbers, and I should have done more diligence and all that stuff, even though the numbers at the time weren't that good in many ways, there was two like holy shit stats that made me like, think about it. And so you usually what you're looking for is something that like blows your hair back. And I don't know what the equivalent is in football or basketball or sports in general, but for us, that is a huge element, is like some signal of specialness. And the big risk factor is that you just kind of get vanilla things across the board rather than one thing that's just a complete outlier.
In football, it seems like the week of the NFL draft, there's a mix of spiky and safe.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, totally.
When they talk about the offensive guard who's, his arms are a little, his reach is a little too short, but like he's going to be a great guard, right? And that's okay. You're not getting fired. You're not getting fired for taking a guy who's going to play 10 years in the NFL, right?
Well, then, like let's take Jalen Carter for example, right? Like widely regarded as the best talent that year, not even close. Yep. And Ravi, he was the guy that I think not universally, but everybody regarded this guy's an all-pro player, potential Hall of Famer.
Okay.
And obviously, this time in this case, spiky because of some off the field stuff.
Sure.
That happened in college. And so he falls to the 8th pick. Right. And again, the crazy thing is Howie Roseman, who, again, these teams all have to do their due diligence, right? And in different ways, right? This time it's a character kind of more so evaluation. And this is a team that the strength of the Eagles at that time is already defensive line. I mean, it's Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, excuse me. they had a boatload of guys. They'd taken Jordan Davis with the first round pick the year before.
Yeah.
And like, you're going to do it again. I mean, you're going to like, and it's to the whole point of like just taking the talent, right? Like, and at this point, so they take him with the 8th pick, which seems crazy now in hindsight that he fell that far. And they're Super Bowl champs, and he's probably the best lineman on the field, O or D lineman in the Super Bowl, right? As a second, third year player. It's crazy. Patrick Mahomes. I know now that like everybody's on the bandwagon of like, we all knew he was going to be great. Bullshit. Yeah. When the Chiefs traded up to get him, there were so many people that crushed them the next day. That this guy, his footwork, his style of play, he's a loose cannon. He's got no fundamentals. He'll never make it in the NFL. Never. Like, and when you think about the way Patrick plays, to your point, Ravi, it is spiky. Like, it looks different.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he plays the position. He throws differently. His footwork's all over the place. I mean, watch him roll left and throw a ball back across the field. Like, totally. Nobody can do that like that. And again, like, that was not a popular thing when the Chiefs traded up to get him.
Yeah, but like, great decisions, generally speaking, amazing, life-altering investments in technology are not made by committee. Somebody has to see something great. And in one respect, it's much easier, guys, because they're not entering a team. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, you think about what you guys are saying, some of these other things, like you're like kind of trying to concoct a team and one person is fitting into it. What we're trying to do is like, yes, this person has to build something around them, but our portfolio doesn't have to work together. Do you see what I'm saying? Our 40 investments in the fund they don't have anything to do with each other in that respect, And so I think that's a little bit easier, where it's like each time you can try to hit a home run each time. And, Shane, I want to hear what you have to say, but one thing that's really funny is sometimes founders, understandably, if they have like good numbers in their business and you choose not to invest or choose not to pursue it, they'll be like, why? What would I have to have in order for you to invest? I mean, it's such a reasonable question. Like, if I'm growing at 3x year over year, what if I was growing at 5x? And it's such a dissatisfying answer, but a lot of times your answer is like, I can't give you a checklist. I only make 1 or 2 investments a year, and I sort of have to like decide that this is one of the 1 or 2 investments I want to make, and I kind of need to like fall in love. I don't know how to tell you what to like bar it.
You hit him with "it's not you, it's me."
No, but the thing
it's not you. It's me.
I know, but Shane, but the thing about it is so crazy. In this case, it's actually true. Like, it's like, I've been dating Upney since I was 19. I've never broken up with anybody. I don't know how this works. I'm just saying that, like, but I actually think in this case, it's like, I can't give you a checklist. I just don't feel it, And like, I think it's true.
If you're picking outside of to how many like surefire bets are there in the NFL draft? Like, typically, maybe 15-ish plus or minus, like, give or take.
Maybe,
right? Like, in a given year. So, and the problem in the NFL, obviously, is like, the better teams, the better you do, you're picking 28, 29, 30, 31. And so, trying to be productive, you either have to trade up into those first 15 picks or hope that some of them fall, right? Which does happen sometimes. Or you got to take, again, like the spiky outlier. And again, like, I just think back to like in KC, we had a good run. And so picking late a lot. And so obviously I mentioned the one time we did, you chose to make a move and get one of those guys with Patrick. But like, I remember like drafting Marcus Peters. Right? We like took him the 20 some pick. And it was, again, like, he had spiky character off the field stuff. And I'll never forget like getting him into training camp. And again, I would like, I don't know what year I was in at that point, 11, 12, like, and we get this rookie into camp, right? Late first round pick. Like, this guy was like immediately different. I'm like, this guy is a freak, like a baller. And again, talking to the whole crew, Chris Ballard did a bunch of due diligence. He was kind of our number 2 GM at that point on all the character stuff. And they're like, no, this guy's misunderstood. This guy's like a great teammate, an awesome football player, and has been misunderstood. And he falls to us in some 20 whatever number pick and turns into, again, like an all-pro player. And I think those are things like, given where your position, especially in sports, like, you have to take some of those risks. And to your point, Ravi, like, it was 1 or 2 guys that held a belief. And in that case,
that's a huge thing.
I distinctly remember Chris Ballard was the guy. Like,
Yeah.
this guy, we can trust this guy. He had done a bunch
Somebody
of
has to
research.
be willing to do that. That
Yep.
I feel very strongly about. You are not going to win a championship without getting a quarterback that can help you win it. It doesn't have to be that
it meets a certain
yeah,
threshold.
right. There's some standard. Okay, cool.
Yep.
And therefore, you need to go get that quarterback either through the draft or through free agency or something. You just being bold, and it might get you fired by doing the bold thing.
Yep.
I think the thing that I get to, which is why I find people that don't like that to be frustrating. I'm kind of like, dude, there's how many NFL teams are there?
32.
There's 32 NFL teams. There's 32 jobs in the world, right? That are GMs. Okay.
Yep.
32. There's not like 10,000 and you have one of them. And so the idea that you then like get in one of those and you're trying to like protect it or whatever, I'm kind of like, no, like you already are elite. And now like the fact that you go there and you're trying to like not swing the bat, you play not to lose is so frustrating. And this is actually very akin to like companies. It's super akin to companies, which is the most maddening thing in the world is when someone gets one of these amazing seats to run one of these amazing companies and then they just like sit there and they like game manage it, right? And it's like, no, go play, throw. Like, who cares if you get fired? This is the whole reason you like worked all this time. It's to like get this seat, you know, and like go do something and like be bold and try things. And like I'm telling you, that guy in Hard Knocks, I forget the name of the Giants GM.
Joe Schoen.
Joe Schoen, his son is like, Dad, you got to trade up to get Jaden Daniels. You know, like, you remember that? That's what he says to him.
Yeah.
And his dad effectively kind of like laughs it off. But I'm like, he was totally right. And to whatever extent he didn't do that because it was like risky or painful or job risking. This is something Peter Thiel says all the time. And it's crazy. He's like, the riskiest thing to do if you're a leader is not take the risk because you are assured to fail and ultimately get bounced if you don't go do it. And this is the thing that I think is so crazy. Like, this is the time. Go be bold.
The crazy thing that is so rare though, to find owners, GMs, and certainly crusty old football coaches telling players to be bold.
Yeah.
You know? And like it just is the opposite, right? Like everything's the other way. But
I think it's time horizon again. You know, like you can not be bold for a couple of years and be fine. But if you want to create anything of value over like a 10-year period, you have to do it. You got to do it.
I agree. That sounds great, Ravi. It sounds great until all of a sudden when you get there and you're trying to hold on. You're trying to, you know, human beings, their first instinct is safety and stasis. All right. We are a people that are ruled by risk aversion, not thrill seeking.
Yeah. Have you ever seen The American President?
Mm-hmm.
You know that movie? Alex, have you seen it?
Yeah.
Michael Douglas, when he's giving the speech at the end, he says this thing that's like amazing. He's like, I was so busy trying to keep my job that I forgot to do my job. And it's like, that is what is happening right now. You know, like you got to like try shit. You got to do things.
You just summed up like my first 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's true for everyone.
Trying to hold on and not fuck it up.
Dude, so much of what literally, you guys asked me this one time, like, when you were at KKR, did Henry and George ever like come and like, you know, like fire up the troops? And I was like, so much of what they would do is just like, stop being so scared, like go do stuff, like just try it. Like they, to their extreme credit, actually were guys that were always like, go be bold, you know, go try things. Like Doug Leone at Sequoia, he would tell people all the time, he's like, you're never going to get anywhere if you don't stick your neck out. Like you actually have to try something if you want something good to happen. And the only thing that I will allow as a counter to this, okay, because I know, Shane, I'm like passionate. There was this guy who's the biggest money maker on Polymarket. You know what Polymarket is? The prediction markets.
Yeah.
So he's like this huge money maker on Polymarket. Okay.
What is Polymarket?
Polymarket.
It's like a real life casino.
Yeah. So like you can say, what the most obvious example, like who's going to be the president?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's going to be the president in 2024? And it's like a real moment by moment way to bet on the
All right.
odds of each thing, and you can monetize it. Because like,
Okay.
let's say there's a 48% chance of one candidate, then it goes to 72. You can monetize that, right? But if you basically think you know something about what's going to happen in the world, you can express that.
Gotcha. All right.
So the one thing that he said that's fascinating is he's like, it's actually not very hard to like make some money in poly market. He's like, you can like make good bets that where you have edge. He's like, the hard part is not losing a lot of money. And he's basically like, what ends up happening, I see you nodding, Shane, because you're definitely going to agree with this. He's like, what actually happens is that experts tend to lose the most money in the domain that they think they're experts in because they overestimate their knowledge of that thing. Like they are an expert. They do know some, but they think they know more than they do on a relative basis.
Yep.
And so the one counter to like go be bold, go be bold, go be bold is that we sometimes overestimate how much we actually know, you know? And you can imagine making like a bad bet because you think you think you're 80% sure of something you're only 60% sure of. Shane, what do you think when you were being drafted? What do you think your chances, what do you think the percentage chance would have been of you being a 13-year NBA player, basically have the career you had or better? What is the likelihood at moment of drafting of that happening?
I would have had probably a 40% confidence level.
Okay. And do you think that would have been like agreed upon by the majority of general managers in the league?
I think that would have been high.
Yeah. And what do you think they would have said at the moment, at time of picking?
They would have put 20.
Okay.
15 to 20% that I have.
What pick number again were you?
6.
I was 6th pick.
I wonder how many 6th overall picks have 13 plus year career.
It's actually like the worst number in the lottery. If you
Really?
look at it is. If you look at it's the pick of horrors. If you go on Basketball Reference, look up all the 6th pick in the draft. It's like the one like always fails.
That's so crazy.
Yes.
Alex, what do you think the chances you would have put? Same question to you. You're getting drafted, 16-year NFL career, multiple Pro Bowls. Forget the injuries for a second.
Yeah.
But just like your level of success, what are the chances you would have put on that at time of being drafted?
I would have been so ignorant or naive if you'd asked me at that time. Like playing 10 or
it's an unfair question.
Playing 10 or 15 years seemed insanely long at that point. I think the thing that it's similar along the same lines. Like if you have the number 1 overall pick, like you expect that to be a franchise changing pick, right? Like or a caliber of a player to have a career pretty special. I personally, like, did I live up to being the number 1 pick? I played 16 years. I played for 3 different franchises. I did take all of them to a division championship. I went to a Super Bowl as a backup. I've gone to championship games. Like I don't know if I lived up. And part of this for me is like, obviously the next quarterback taken is a Hall of Famer, right? Like that won MVPs and a Super Bowl. So I will always be compared to Aaron, but I don't know, like apples to apples, if you put up all the number 1 picks, like what, I don't know if do I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
You're not the worst.
I don't know.
Alex, you're not the worst. You're my boy.
No,
I'm the worst.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not the worst.
No, but Alex,
give yourself some credit. You had a hell of a
my guess. My guess, Alex, is that you are dramatically overestimating the production on average of a number 1, number 2, or number 3 pick in the NFL. Like I spoke one time to a former NBA GM who told me that the likelihood of a top 3 pick turning into a perennial all-star, top 3 pick, which is like sort of all this stuff. He's like, it's like sub 5%. Like the percentages on all this stuff is so low, which goes back to like why that people need to stockpile. So my guess is that even in the most stringent group that you could come up with, number 1 picks, I would bet you that you are well above the expected value for that, simply because you went to multiple Pro Bowls and played for 16 years. Yeah, and I think the reason I think this is important is I kind of think it goes back to the like be bold argument, because if you assume that the chances of somebody being productive are lower than we might expect, You know what I'm saying? Like even the sure thing is not a sure thing. The price of risk is lower than people think.
Yep.
I think that is actually like a huge takeaway for me, like in my life, that I think about all the time, which is basically other than a mistake of integrity in business, you can basically bounce back from anything. Like if you make a mistake of integrity, you have a big problem. Like you can never shake it. But any other mistake you can basically bounce back from. And so generally speaking, what the people that like create real things tell you is they sort of like people overestimate the cost of failure or risk. And I suspect that's true in sports too for like these GMs. Did Jerry West know that Kobe was going to be Kobe? Like you can't know, but did he have a sense that he had a chance enough to be great that he was willing to trade away his starting center for him? Like, yeah. And so I wonder if we almost give too much credit to the people that are like, I knew this was going to happen versus people that are just like, there is some chance of it happening and therefore I'm going to like behave accordingly.
We're probably overvaluing the risk.
Yes.
And on the spikiness, their upside is higher.
Yes.
If it does work.
Yes.
Whereas if you're taking the safe bet.
Yes.
Who may have a higher floor, but a lower ceiling,
Well, the one place, and this is so Shane, you mentioned this earlier, the pain that a fan base takes for multiple years of being bad, okay? Multiple years. How do you compare that to the pain that a fan base takes for twice as long of being mediocre? Do you see what I'm saying? Like let's say you're not like the bottom, but you are sometimes making the playoffs and you make it as the 8th seed. And do you see what I'm saying? Because I can tell you for me, like as a Bulls fan,
yeah,
God, I wish that we were not 42-40 every fucking year. I would much rather us just like bottom out for multiple years to see if we can actually do something.
Yeah.
But this like purgatory of where we are, where we don't even have a chance to get better, but you know what I'm saying? We're not going to get the best free agents and we don't have a top draft pick and we keep on, like maybe making the playoffs. Like, it's like, it's just like, you're not going anywhere.
It's hope. I mean, that's the difference. You're able to sell hope when you're aimlessly tanking.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's always it might be our year. It might be our envelope at the top of the draft board.
But that's what I think the draft is about. The draft is about hope. The draft
100%.
is about right. The draft
100%.
is about hope. And I think people overestimate the risk of like doing something bold. You know what I'm saying? Okay, just to argue against myself for a second, the one thing that you could say is that the Clippers, by trading for Paul George and giving away all those picks and giving away Shea, that was bold. And that was a big multi-year franchise mistake, probably.
I think to your point, though, you make the argument. This is all the big trades in football. It's the RG3 trade. It's the Herschel Walker trade.
Yeah.
You're giving up so much for this one player and you're sacrificing so many future swings, right? Like that's the limit. And that's what the Clippers did, right? Like all these future first round picks that are gone, that they've mortgaged, like those were all swings. And I think, like, to your point, it's actually like a numbers game.
The risk of giving away a lot of your swings in a game that you don't have as much certainty in is really high. It's like the value of future picks is actually pretty like underestimated, right?
And you think you're an expert.
Yeah, and you think you're an expert on the value of this
market
player.
No, wait. So you're saying be bold, but not too bold.
No.
Okay.
No. What I'm saying, good point. I think I'm saying, Shane, you got to be bold in the draft, right? I'm saying you got to be bold in the draft. And I think that on free agents, you should be bold as long as you're not giving up tons of future picks, right?
Sure.
Bold,
it's all random. It's all random. It's all random. It's all random.
Do you not think it was bold by the Thunder?
It's all random.
I think Presti on the Thunder for that Shea pick, I kind of think what he did a good job of was figuring out that the real thing he needed was lots of picks, and that Paul George wasn't one of the 5 guys in the NBA that can take you to a title.
And so he's evaluated talent.
I think so.
better and like understands that somebody was overvaluing that.
I think so.
And overpaid for it. Like, so that, like, I think inherently
new owner needs to win. He's going to overvalue this guy.
He knew the market better and had to bet, you know.
Shane,
and a healthy Kawhi Leonard had nothing to do with the trade being a bust.
Okay, well, here's a question.
Exactly. It's all contextual.
No. I got it. Here's a question for you. Okay.
The Brooklyn.
I know you don't want to do this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But if you were a GM of an NBA team for 10 years.
Yep.
Okay. 10 years. And you are doing all the analysis. You are unemotional about the decisions.
Yep.
Okay. I know you said it's all random, but do you think you would do a good job with enough duration, knowing everything you know about the league, right? And I understand that there is some risk that you might not, just because of stuff that's totally out of your control.
Yep.
But like, do you think overall that you'd be better than the average GM over a 10-year period, just based on the fact that you're like disciplined and analytical about it?
I would be capable. And the basketball gods would let me know if I was. History would remember me as a winner or a loser. And that's the best we can hope for. I think I'm smart enough to know that I don't know it all. And I think I'm smart enough to know that if I ever did that, I would need people that are much smarter than me, and I would know when to listen to and when not to. And that would be my strength. And if you get a few bounces and some good health, that's the best you can hope for in this crazy sports world.
Dude, the crazy thing is that you could just take everything you said and apply it to life, right? And apply it to much bigger than sports, and it would totally work. Like your Zen attitude on that of like, I'm just going to do what I can do. I'm going to do what's in my control. And there's gonna be a bunch of luck that's going to determine some of these other things. It's not just specific to like being a GM in basketball, And
if they fired me, I just go back to glue guys. So win, 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 win,